Posted by user Tired Bloodshot Soul. Man who called my job. Let's not meet. I grew up in a middle-class family. The kind of family whose children would start out at jobs at grocery stores or coffee shops. But upon turning 18, being the black sheep of my family, I took a job at a gas station, and not a run-down or dirty one at all, but still a gas station. Customers were generally friendly, but every job had the older men who took the time out of their day to make innuendos to the more attractive girls. I never felt in danger, until one night. I was working an overnight, and just like any other night, badly any customers, lots of cleaning and keeping busy in order to not fall asleep standing up. Around 2 a.m. the phone rang, which wasn't an oddity. Some people called to make sure we were open 24 hours. I picked it up without a second thought, giving my general greeting. There was a pause, a few harsh and sharp breaths at the other end. Then, "You ignored me today, my name. I'm sorry, may I ask who's calling? You're so loved. I love you so much. And you just ignored me." He then began to sing, voice slurring from what must have been from a blood alcohol level way above the limit of sanity. "You are loved, my name, so loved, I love you." I got scared, and without hearing another word I hung up. I told my co-worker, and he said it was probably a joke, or some guy just wanting to scare a freshly legal public worker. I went on with my work after my co-worker gave me the button to hook onto the back of my pants that would call 911 upon being pressed, but I would still jump every time he walked behind me or the door would open. Finally, when I started to calm down again, the phone rang again. My co-worker was outside and the phone had to be answered. So hesitantly I answered it and raised it to my ear. "You need to get out of my head." His tone was angry now, demanding, as if I had done something to him. I didn't say anything. "Get out of it? You won't leave me alone. I love you. Don't you understand?" I hung up. Set the phone down. I got myself some water, telling myself that I was making it a bigger deal than it was. I wasn't I? Instantly the phone rang again, and a burst of anger, I grabbed it and answered it. Without giving him a second, I demanded a reason. "What do you want from me?" I practically screamed into the phone. I was tired, annoyed, and over being afraid of a man who took to a phone as a weapon. "You seem stressed." "I'm coming to see you." A click and a long dial tone greeted my eardrum as my lip began to quiver. The rest of the night I felt like I was trapped in a box, like I didn't have enough air to breathe, like the door opening would be the end of me. But he didn't come. The phone didn't ring again. Customers came and went, each as innocent as the last, tiredly handing me cash and asking me to put it on their pumps. When my shift came to an end and the sun had risen, I felt freedom, stepping out of the store and making my way to my car. There was a note on my front windshield. "I told you I would come see you. Man who called my job. Let's not ever meet." This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Hosted by user Grotesque Ghoul. My ex-boyfriend's dad. 2 years ago, when I was a sophomore in high school, I started dating someone. Grayson. Our relationship was very explosive and toxic, but that is not what this story is primarily about. Grayson's dad always gave me the creeps. I believe in a way, he was a pathological liar. Here's some background. Tim is really full of himself. He believes he's established his own businesses, thinks he's come up with innovative war tactics the government is using thanks to him. I also have reason to believe he was dishonorably discharged from the military. Grayson always told me that he left the Air Force to come home and be with his wife. He doesn't have his uniform. He doesn't have any paperwork regarding this. However, leaving because your wife misses you isn't a valid excuse in the military. At first it seemed innocent, such as giving me and my mom his cell phone number in case we needed to be in touch. Grayson was always bad about ignoring texts from his dad in school, so I'd find him, and tell him his dad was waiting outside for him. But it kind of got weird. He would go out of his way to text me and my mom for non-Grayson related matters. He would often invite me over when Grayson was not over, to do things such as Grayson's laundry or to bake cookies or to even wait until he gets home to surprise him. My mom never let me, nor did I really want to go because I knew this was weird. Anytime Grayson and I were on the phone, his dad would start saying really mean things to him, yelling at him, calling him r**tard, stupid, etc. It always made me uncomfortable, because I'd come around and his dad would act very different. He started treating anytime me and Grayson like we were on playdates like we were children. He would often remark about me being his stepdaughter to strangers. And this man could talk. He would talk to anyone and everyone regardless if they seemed up to conversation or not. Which made it really awkward for us, because Grayson would have his arm wrapped around me, or we'd be affectionate, and him saying that would make things awkward for us. I remember trying to tell Grayson several times that his dad really freaked me out, and my parents were not happy about his dad either. He didn't really understand. He told me he had lost his daughter at birth, and that maybe him acting that way was his way coping with it. Grayson's dad, Tim, had recently gotten close with a neighbor at the apartment complex. She had a daughter. Kelly was 6, maybe 7 years old. Her mom was a deadbeat. Would only come around Tim whenever she needed money to get cigarettes or drugs. But she did not hesitate to let Kelly spend several hours alone with Tim, or letting Tim pick her up from school. I remember one specific time that he brought Kelly along to pick Grayson up from my house. It was cold outside. He sent her to my door in pajamas. We had been watching a scary movie, and when she saw Grayson, she excitedly said, "Tim is taking me to see Moana." It was 11 p.m. It was really late, and I was extremely bewildered. Kelly eventually got taken away from her mother and was in a foster home. Tim would try to get me or Grayson to go to the door and leave stuff for her to have, from Tim. Then he eventually, even tried to get custody of her, regardless that there was no blood relation or any credentials that would allow him to do so. Another time, around the Super Bowl, he had come up to the door, with a beer bottle in hand. He doesn't even ask to come in, he just kinda forces the door open and comes in the bathroom to pee. He then takes Grayson, beer bottle in hand, and drives home. Here are a list of other things that I remember happening, but it's been over a few years so there is more, but I cannot recall every detail. One time, Tim texted my mom, and inquired about me and Grayson. We had been arguing, and we argued a lot. His dad then, jokingly asks my mom is she on her period. I get it is a crude joke, and many guys joke about it, but imagine someone texting you and asking on your daughter's behalf. Another time, me and Grayson were giggling and making jokes in the back seat. I remember his dad always talking about me and Grayson getting married. I was a sophomore, he was a freshman. So we thought about it, yeah, but was it ideally going to happen? Not really. Grayson then said something along the lines of getting married? I don't think so. His dad then says, well if you don't marry her, then I will. I was shocked that something like that would even be said. I was, at that point, very weirded out. He had asked me to go out to Golden Corral with him and Grayson. I knew Grayson was at his mom's house, but for some reason, I thought he had already came home and was with his dad. I got into his dad's car. I was just in the car with him, and 2 other older men. I started furiously texting Grayson. I asked him where he was, and if he was actually going. He was asleep. He didn't even know his dad had came and got me. His mom was pissed. She chewed his dad out on the phone, while it was on the car speaker and I was sitting behind his seat. She said he needed to stop with this weird behavior. We go inside the restaurant, and I'm quiet. I'm just waiting for Grayson to text me. I am upset, and I'm confused. He finally comes in, he was mortified. I wanted so badly to go home. But I didn't want to make a scene by leaving. So I tolerated it. Our last and final argument ensued. It was because Grayson started sexting girls. Grayson made it very clear, he did not permit me to talk to other boys. I unadded every boy I had on social media. So this really distraught me, after everything our relationship went through. There were other signs that I ignored too, about how he'd surround himself with girls when I wasn't around, and how he'd touch on other girls in his gym class. But this was the final and last time I wanted to be walked all over. I snitched on him, to his dad. I didn't explicitly say that Grayson had sexted girls, I didn't want him to be in legal trouble. But I did ask him to delete my number, and told him I wouldn't come around anymore. His dad told me I was being unreasonable, and that his son was a gentleman, and that he raised his son well enough, that his son wouldn't cheat. It was a lot more drama than I needed. So at the end of it all, I blocked him on everything. Tim started trying to reach out to me through his Facebook account, through his business account. I often just blocked him, and didn't tell my mom because I felt like it was old news. A few months ago, I reached out to Grayson. Grayson had taken my virginity. I was embarrassed to tell him that I had an STI, and that he needed to be checked. A week or two later, I get a letter in the mail. His dad Tim decided to reach out to me. Keep in mind, me and Grayson had only talked about the STI stuff. Nothing more. We had been apart for 2 years. I still lived at the same address. I suppose he had told his dad he needed testing done, and his dad took it upon himself to discipline me, now 18 years old. I'll retype a few of the things said on this card. The front of the card says which first? Pout or cry? With a little girl in pigtails on the front pouting. Opening the card, it originally just says miss you. And written, all over the card. You are too smart for irresponsible behavior. Respect yourself, respect your body. Reach for the stars. Achieve your goals, get your education. Don't blow it now. Hang on baby girl. If you need me, just call. If you need a ride, or just someone to talk to. Your friend, Tim. Picture your future, present tense. Achieve your dreams. Hey dear, respect yourself. Don't throw yourself at boys. If a guy truly loves you, he will hold on to you. There are many diseases out there. Some are incurable. Reserve sex for marriage. Do right by God. Don't become a baby mama. You are smart, pretty, nice and sincere. Don't let the world change you. I wasn't the one to open the card. My mom was, as she had recognized the name. She called the cops and had them investigate it further. The cops even remarked that this behavior was strange, and should be looked into. I don't really know of all the details, I was working when all of this went down. We still have the card in my mom's nightstand as evidence just in case this were to go any further. His older brother, Tyler, works at a bar-type restaurant we frequent at a lot. He and I don't really make small talk, we act like we don't know each other, but the way he looks at me, I can tell in a way he feels sorry. I truly empathize with him, because he too has a long-term girlfriend and I can imagine his dad doing the same thing to them. It's gotten so bad, that one of his older sons, who has his first grandbabies, is moving away to get away from him. His wife doesn't like Tim, and even he can see through the man his dad proclaims to be. I apologize if this is all scattered, and it doesn't really add up. It's been a while, and I haven't really typed it all out, nor really talked to anyone about this other than my immediate family. I have other reasons to believe that maybe Tim isn't mentally sound, and he uses Catholicism to back up his reasoning for many things he does wrong in life. I think maybe the reason why our relationship failed, was because Grayson's dad mistreated him, and going to his mom's house was an escape from that. I think that is truly why Grayson treated me how he did. And it breaks my heart for him, but I am glad that I am well out of that relationship, well out of having to deal with his dad, and in a brand new relationship, with a family that adores me. While this isn't extreme, I really, hope that I will never ever be involved with Tim, or affiliate with any of the members of his family again. Update, editing, and removal of some words. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Posted by user VYF8AC. Gym Teacher Blues. When I was in high school, for the first 2 years we had a female gym teacher. She was stern, but fair, and was willing to work with people to make sure they got their grade up and stayed active in the class. During my 3rd year of high school, they hired a male teacher to take over half of all gym classes, Mr. M. Mr. M was nothing like the other gym teacher. He was disorganized, lazy, and generally acted like he didn't want to be there and that everyone was a waste of time. He also specifically taught only the girls. I think this might have been why no one said anything when he started coming into the locker rooms to hurry us up and check up on things. Everyone said that was just his way, and there was no harm in getting the girls to stop chatting and get to class. Except, we weren't sitting around chatting, we were all actively changing, and quickly, in order to avoid him doing that after the first time. But it didn't stop. Then, we got to the swimming part of gym, and suddenly Mr. M started taking even more of an interest in us, specifically in locker room checks. The difference between the swimming portion of gym, and the regular gym we had before, was that it involved a different locker room on another floor of the school, and this one had showers. Within a minute of turning the showers on he would come in to check on us despite the fact that it was after the class was done and we still had 15 minutes to leave and get to our next class. Again, all of our concerns were pushed aside. The thing about water is, it's probably going to feel cold when you first get into it, but you become adjusted over time. Our class was an hour long, 45 minutes swimming, and 15 changing at the end for showers, which Mr. M insisted we take every time. The thing about the pool was, it was never warm. You were cold in that pool from the second you got in, to the second you got out. An almost shivering amount of cold. Once, we had a substitute gym teacher, and that was the only time the pool wasn't freezing. We all commented on it, and the substitute looked very puzzled as to why it would be so cold the rest of the time. When Mr. M came back, he made a point to throw a fit about how warm the substitute had let the pool get. We all thought it was just a show because she brought up how odd it was, for every one of us to always be cold. We weren't sensitive either, we had all grown up in the country, swimming in ponds and even rivers and lakes, so when I say it was too cold for us, that really means something. There was a smaller pool next to ours that the swim team used. I got to use it once while I was recovering from surgery, and the swim team told me that they never liked to use the other pool because it was too cold, and their coach had arguments multiple times with Mr. M on why it was such a low temperature until she finally gave up and had them all practice in the other, older pool. Then Mr. M decided he wanted to try some new things in class. He set up what he called a survival class where he had us bring in extra clothes and then do things in the pool in order to act out real life and death scenarios and prepare us in case of emergency. What did we do, you may ask? One time we were told to get in the pool with our extra clothes on and our swimsuits underneath, and huddle together to keep warm while he stood over us and watched, for the entire 45 minutes. We were made to do this in pairs or groups of 3. Another was when he had us go into the pool with our extra clothes on, then take off our pants, tie the legs, and inflate them with air to use as a flotation device. We were then made to swim in place, holding the pants, and basically just exist while he watched us for the rest of the class. Just swim in place for a good half an hour or so. Again, no one listened when we said how odd this was because he was teaching us safety. My friend was terrified of the water, and was in my gym class, so I was partnered with her for most things. On one occasion, I was holding her and walking her around as she floated on her back to get her accustomed to the water and to not be afraid. Mr. M proceeded to throw pool rings as close to us as possible, causing the water to splash in my friend's face. When one caused a particularly large splash, my friend freaked out and clung to me, in fear of drowning. As anyone who has dealt with someone who thinks they are drowning can tell you, they flail quite a bit and are hard to handle. As she scrambled to find safety, practically climbing on top of me in the pool as she did so, despite us being in the shallow end, she pulled my suit strap off and exposed half of my chest, fully. Mr. M watched and laughed and did not look away, and I could not fix my strap because my friend had a grip on it and it took several minutes for her to calm down. We were alone in the pool the entire time as this was supposed to be a one-on-one thing to help my friend with her fear. Afterwards, we started a yoga section, something that was again, Mr. M's idea. He didn't know anything about yoga, he just played a video and walked around us while we followed along, making sure to correct anyone who was out of form. Then he started a relaxation section, which was the creepiest one. Mr. M had us all lay down on yoga mats in the auditorium in the space between the front row of seats and the stage, and turned all of the lights off except a setway in the back of the stage. He told us to lay spread eagle, close our eyes, and just relax. We could all hear him walking back and forth at our feet, and we were all just made to lay there and basically pretend to be asleep until the period was over. I think even administration saw through that one, because it only lasted 3 classes. I don't know what happened to him or where he is now, as he was still teaching there when I graduated and when my friend graduated a couple of years later. I hope someone eventually did something about him. He was well beyond creepy. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Posted by user Taurus Nobun. He called me a latex princess. I'm a born and raised New Yorker, I know the bad patches of town, I know how to handle myself, and I surely know danger when I see one coming. In my 21 years here, this is the first time I've encountered anyone like this, and honestly, it creeps me out even thinking about it. 2 days ago, with an overabundance of free time, I decided it's time to spend money on myself. Oh, and before I even continue with the story, I have to make a note of something. I'm not into BDSM, neither am I a masochist or into getting tied up or anything similar. I just like how latex/leather looks like and feels like when I wear it, and combine it with everyday clothes that tone down its sexual look and vibe. Anyways, the plan was to visit an adult store that has latex/leather clothes, namely a corset and new leggings, which I desperately needed, grab a bite and head back home to relax for the remainder of the day, knowing that I'm alone as my parents are out of town. It was shaping out to be a perfect alone time day. I got the adult store that I usually buy latex and leather clothes, which I won't disclose for obvious reasons, and said hi the cashier before browsing away and looking for something to buy. Honestly, it's so much easier and less intimidating because I know most of the people working there. Makes it natural and less daunting. 30 or so minutes later, I finally found a bunch of stuff that aroused my curiosity. Usually, I'm very picky and can't decide, so as a general rule of thumb, I try to buy the stuff that I like before I change my mind and overthink the purchase. Leggings, corset, stockings, and even a top. Thank God no one was looking, because it'd be tough to change their impression after seeing me with all of those things, ready to check out. Or so I thought. Just before turning around and heading straight to the cashier, I bumped into someone. I quickly apologized before taking a look at him. He was tall, well-dressed and intimidating, yet something about him was intriguing. Perhaps it was the fact that he was carrying a bunch of chains and collars to check out, or the fact that he stoically didn't say anything until I looked him in the eyes. "Don't worry about it, latex princess." That's literally all he said before smiling and continuing past me, only to stop and look at the same aisle where I just found all the latex stuff that I was going to buy. I kid you not, Chills ran down my spine the moment I turned around to walk away. It was like my body itself knew he was watching me. I noped out of there as quickly as I could and didn't even bother grabbing anything to eat. I just wanted to feel safe under the blanket in my room, knowing I don't want to meet him again despite my curiosity. And I wish that's where the story ends, but it doesn't. The following morning I was supposed to meet with a good friend of mine. I had all but forgotten about my creepy encounter when we sat down to eat breakfast at our favorite place. Again, I can't disclose the location, but it's a pretty fancy cafe on Manhattan. She told me she had to use the bathroom before leaving and said it shouldn't be long. I nodded and unconsciously picked up my phone to kill some time. That's when I noticed someone taking a sit opposite of me, where my friend sat. It was the man I met the day before at the adult store. "Good morning, latex princess." Ironically, I was wearing the latex leggings that I bought when I bumped into him. Before I could even say anything, he reached down his pocket inside his suit and took out a piece of paper with a number written on it. It was neatly handwritten with the most elegant handwriting I've seen in my life. He slowly pushed the piece of paper in front of me, smiled and stood up to leave. "Try calling. See you around, latex princess." Noticing my friend walking over, I quickly took the piece of paper and hid it in my purse, not wanting to explain what happened. I felt like keeping a poker face for a few minutes is better than having a panic attack. I made up a story as to why I need to go and apologized for cutting our plan short. She didn't give me any trouble and I went home as soon as I could. It's Monday 7:30 a.m. right now as I'm writing this. I'm still not sure how exactly he found me to give me the phone number, nor I know what exactly would happen if I was to call. I thought giving it a day to think would be for the best, but I'm at a loss of ideas. Did I accidentally stumble upon some secret fetish group a few minutes away from where I live, or was the man just overly confident in his approach and came out creepy and mysterious? I don't know, and I hope curiosity doesn't kill the cat. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Posted by user Crushap. Home Intruder. This story takes place on Election Day 2012, November 6, at roughly 4:45 p.m. It starts when I am doing homework at the kitchen table. It was almost dark out and the weather was neutral and cool. I was finishing up a math sheet I was working on when I hear a loud thud come from my room. I immediately go and unlock the door to see what the cat might have dropped or knocked off, but to my surprise, everything was where it should be. The cat came darting out as fast as possible, which did not make me worry very much, as she is always like that. Not more than half an hour later and I am reading an ebook in my room in the dark. This is when weird goes to horrifying. Around 5:05, when the sun is totally down but the light still illuminates a little bit, I hear a cell phone text notification ring in my closet. At that point I was sure not to make too much noise, but quickly got up out of bed, ran and got my dad's .357 from the closet, and then went over to my neighbor's house and had his son, who is in his 30s, come and check the house out with me. I gave him an aluminum ball bat I had lying on my porch and he yelled inside, "If there is anybody in here, come out right now." Nobody came out. We went around back after a minute only to find our ladder leaned up directly against my window. My mom came over not long after, as I had told both she and my dad about what was going on. My neighbor's son, my mom, and I all went inside, and my neighbor opened my closet whilst I kept the muzzle of the pistol trained on it. Nobody was in there at all. The house was totally empty after plenty of searching. My dad got home obviously worried for my safety, but told me that I did everything right by getting the gun, and my neighbor always was curious about what happened that night and if/when the person responsible for that sound in my closet left. To the one that caused all of that, let's not meet. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Posted by user Strange Fit Softpason. Moving to a nicer neighborhood turned into a nightmare. Last year my fiancé and my mom passed away, one right after the other. After they died I obviously fell into a deep depression. Though I thought I was pulling off the whole I'm fine thing, my friends could clearly see through it. A close friend almost demanded I move in with her and get out of the apartment I shared with my fiancé for 10 years. She wanted me to start fresh, and while I didn't think I was ready to move on, the idea of not living alone was appealing, plus her apartment is in a much nicer neighborhood than the one I was currently living in, so I agreed. Living with her has been fantastic. Our schedules are opposite, me on days, her on nights, so we both get alone time, but we also have at least one day a week off together so we can hang out. Moving has also allowed me to be able to walk to work as it's so close. I thought that would be a godsend until my 10-minute walk caused a 2-month-long nightmare. I decided to sit in the park that's between my apartment and my job one evening after work. As I'm sitting there, a man approached me. I saw his face first. He was almost handsome if not a little rough looking. Even though I live in an urban area with a high homeless population, it didn't occur to me this man was anything but a mildly handsome 40-something guy, so I smiled and looked back down at my phone expecting him to walk on by me. Nope. He asked me what time it was. When I looked up to tell him, I noticed all the stuff he was carrying. It was so random: a kid's chalkboard with nonsense all over it, a paper bag full of old magazines and paperwork, and a steel shelf that at one point would have held CDs. I then noticed he wasn't wearing shoes and his hands were filthy. Needless to say, it finally dawned on me that this was not going to be a normal encounter. He started talking non-stop. Some of it nonsense but some coherent, all of it fucking crazy. Of the parts I could follow, he told me he had just been released from prison and he was looking for a tattoo shop because he wanted to get fuck the doc, the Department of Corrections, and 34, the number of doc violations he had while in prison, tattooed on him, and he wanted the doc to pay for it. He then noticed a button I had on my bag that had the logo for a local gay bar on it. He told me he had gone there one night and went home with a guy. Then he looked me up and down and said, "But young ladies are my problem." I gathered my stuff and left immediately. Now I love this apartment, but it has its drawbacks which became glaringly obvious after this encounter. The apartment is on the first floor. I love it because you can walk out the sliding glass doors, one in the living room and one in my bedroom, right onto an awesome gated patio that has tables and grills for barbecuing, so it's awesome in the summer. I now hate it because it's right on the street and the fencing is clearly very easy to scale. One very early morning, around 5 a.m., I hear a man scream, "What the fuck are you doing?" so loud and so close it woke me up from a dead sleep, and I legitimately thought it was coming from in my bedroom. As it turned out, it was coming from outside. A neighbor had been leaving for work and discovered a man, the man from the park, sleeping against my sliding glass door. The dude got scared off, my neighbor checked on me, and once I calmed down I chalked it up to a fucked up coincidence. 2 weeks later I was sleeping and at some point this man came on the patio and was now tapping on my sliding glass door. I honestly just laid there, frozen in fear, until he escalated to full-blown kicking the glass. I turned the light on to grab my phone and he took off. I called the police and they came over to take the report and to look at footage from the cameras in the building. The footage confirmed it was the man from the park, and more disturbingly the footage from the hallway cameras showed that on more than one occasion he had slipped in the building behind a resident and sat in the lobby for several hours, at one point going down the hallway and trying my doorknob and my neighbor's doorknob to see if they were locked. He even went so far as to hide in the little mailbox room when he saw my roommate coming in from work. The police think he either followed me from the park or had just happened to notice me at one point when I was on the patio. It's been a few weeks and I haven't seen him, and no one has reported seeing him in or around the building. My roommate bought me pepper spray, and my kinda kooky, albeit well-meaning, neighbor who has made it very clear he's retired military and a bit of a gun nut checks on me nightly, so I'm not as freaked out as I could be, but still. Crazy fucking guy from the park. Let's not meet again. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Posted by user betteroffdetja. Should have listened to our dad. Let's go way back to the summer of 1992. I was 14 and a half, my little brother was 12. We had moved into a new subdivision near the power plant my father worked at in New Jersey. Mom worked 4 days a week as a secretary, so we were left with my older sister who was 16. My oldest brother was still alive at the time at 18, but he was away at boot camp. My brother and I would spend most of our days riding our bikes with the neighbor boys. We often would ride our bikes out of the subdivision and hang out at a Wawa buying crap and doing tricks on our bikes. Sometimes we would ride a little further to this industrial area that had broken down equipment and tunnels. My dad had heard we liked to hang out there and told us we better not hang out there. Of course that just made us want to even more. My mom left for work and my brother and I made our bowl of Kix and Cocoa Rice Krispies. Then we shouted up to my sister who was watching MTV in her bedroom we were going. The neighbor boys were on vacation, so it was just us two. We rode to the Wawa and got our bottle of pop and junk food. We decided to go see what kind of cool stuff we could find at the industrial area. Previous trips we had found a scruffed up Walkman and a metal baseball bat. We rode up there and left our bikes outside the gate. You squeezed under a gate and then you were in this gigantic lot. It had used to house a construction company, so there were metal beams and these cool gigantic blue tunnel-like things. We were running around talking about our upcoming trip to the Jersey Shore when I realized my brother had gone silent. I look around, no sign of him. I start calling him, screaming David over and over. I start looking in the tunnels for him when I come out of a tunnel and run into my brother and two guys. Both were obviously homeless, ripped flannel shirts, dirty jeans. They both reeked of cigarettes and booze. One of them, a guy who maybe had one tooth, had his hand over my brother's mouth. My brother was terrified. He was full on crying, his face red and splotchy. The guys looked at me and something in me snapped. I was never much of a fighter as a kid, but I knew if I didn't do something, something bad was going to happen to my brother and me. I kicked at the guy holding David and screamed, "Run!" The guy next to me tried grabbing onto my shirt, but thank goodness they had been drinking and their reaction times were dulled. My brother stood still for a second, still sobbing, until I grabbed his arm and then he began to run. We heard the guys running after us, heard them shouting. Then something that terrifies me to this day, I heard other voices besides theirs, maybe 2 or 3 other men. I ran as hard and fast as I could and we scrambled under that fence, ended up scraping both our backs. As we jumped on our bikes we saw that 2 of them were trying to get under the fence to get to us. My brother and I took off. It's a miracle he didn't crash. He was full out hyperventilating, crying by this point. We rode straight home. My sister heard David freaking out and came downstairs. When we told her what happened, she turned white and called my dad. He told her he'd take care of it at lunch. All I know is after the butt whooping we got for going there and the trauma of that incident, we never biked near there again. I had asked my dad a few years ago whatever came of that. He said he had driven by the lot on his lunch with 2 of his pals, but by then the guys were long gone. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Posted by user Big B Wolf. Creep on an airplane thinks I'm a 12-year-old boy. Last year, my parents took us to California for the summer. We were going to go Disneyland mainly, but we were landing in Vegas to stay at a hotel my stepmother loved. While on the plane I sat alone in second class while my parents sat in first class. Figures. At the time I was in the middle of my transitioning. I'm a trans guy, and I passed pretty well. But the only reason why was because most people thought I was a young boy around the ages of 10 to 15. It mostly depended on what I was wearing and how deep I could manage to make my voice. In second class I sat between a white man, which was near the window on my right, and a possible Hispanic/Latino woman, to which was on my left. Hating planes, I fidgeted where I sat and tried to calm myself for the takeoff. The man next to me was staring at me the entire time while the lady was on her phone. He looked to be around his mid-30s and he was wearing a business suit. He smiled at me and asked me why I looked so scared. I told him I was scared of planes and that I hated heights. Looking out the window of a plane flying high was enough to make me feel dizzy and short of breath. At first I found him to be very kind and charming and he talked me through the lift-off and the rising of the plane. Then he started getting weird. As the plane settled into flight, he asked me why I was heading to Vegas of all places and if I was heading there alone. I explained to him that my family was going to Disneyland. He laughed at this and said, "Why go to Disneyland when you could go to a nice beach in Cali? I bet you would look handsome in a pair of swimming trunks." Okay. Weird comment, but okay. Slightly creeped out, I pulled out a book in an attempt to look busy, but he kept on asking me questions. I ignored the rest until he asked me how old I was. In reality I was 17 at the time, but just to get this guy off my back I lied to him and told him that I was 12. He marveled at my response, going on to say how mature I looked for my age. I tried to ignore him the best I could, but he just kept asking questions about my personal life like, "Do you play sports? How many siblings do you have? Are you the only boy in your family? Do you like to swim?" This went on and on until the plane landed. While I was trying to get my suitcase from up above, the dude leaned in close to me and announced in a very loud, affectionate whisper, "I wish you were my son so that I could kiss you goodbye." The lady behind me heard this and yelled something along the lines of "What the fuck?" in Spanish. Shout out to my friend Marcelo who taught me curse words and phrases in Spanish. A set of parents and two older men stared over at us as the woman pulled me behind her. The guy stared in horror as this tiny woman sized him up. She had a thick accent, and started screaming at him in English with bits of Spanish mixed in. I couldn't really tell what she was saying in English due to her accent, but my limited amount of Spanish could tell she was referring to me. Nino equals boy, el equals masculine pronoun, and the man, hombre equals man. She also juggled in some more curse words and threatened to get her telefono out to call the policia. In the middle of her yelling she pulled out my suitcase and handed it to me. I thanked her in her native language and she coaxed me out of the seating while she continued to chew this dude out. I told my parents about it and my dad wanted to go find this dude and beat the shit out of him. He told the pilot about the dude and the pilot was like, "Yeah, we were already told about him by a young Hispanic woman who was flying with us. We will take care of it." So creepy dude who thought it was hot that I was a 12-year-old boy, let's never fucking meet again. Badass Hispanic woman who called this creep out on his bullshit and saved my life and probably other kids' lives. Let's meet again one day so that I can buy you a coffee and thank you. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Posted by user Classy Pigeons. She nearly saw me naked. Hey Reddit. I'm not usually one to remember these things, but when I do they're usually scary. Because of that, I usually feel uncomfortable talking about situations like this, but after hearing a similar story on r/the YouTube channel, I felt confident enough to actually post it, maybe unpack some shit. So to start this story, I was in 8th grade and 12 to clarify, sorry for the confusion, when I met this person, Amber. Amber was the older sister of my younger sister's friend, and I first met her when my little sister's friend's family was coming over to the house. I didn't really mind Amber's company at the time because she was mostly on her phone whenever we hung out. But when I first met her, I thought she was a little hyper and weird. I didn't really care, I was hyper, I'm diagnosed with ADHD, and pretty weird too. But it got weird fast. It started when I was at Amber's house drawing with chalk and talking with Amber's little sister. I don't remember how this came up, but I started talking about my other friend, Haven. Suddenly Amber, who was on her phone the entire time, looked up, interrupted me, which, if you know me personally, I get pissed off by, and said you/classy pigeons, I have this friend, I'll say she's ally. She always talks about all her other friends whenever we hang out and it's so annoying. I was very pissed because I never really talked about Haven, much less all my other friends, but didn't say anything. Later that day she asked me if I figured out who ally was. I said was it me, and she started spitting in my face about how I shouldn't talk about other friends around her. It was so possessive of her that I got really upset, but I thought I don't know her life, so I stopped. Honestly, I don't know how I didn't see it sooner. She would be at my house sometimes and ask to borrow my stuff, particularly my bras. Now I don't really mind, she was in a much less pleasant financial situation as me, and I had some nice bras. So I let her. But then she'd try and take them, saying that her bras had the exact same loose thread or some shit. It got to the point where I'd label mine with my initials on the tag. One day I was at Haven's school dance recital, that I came to for the sole purpose of being supportive of Haven and hanging out with Haven, and I saw Amber. I had recently found out that Amber's entire family was whack, her older sister was on drugs and drinking, the older brother was a potential drug dealer, there were only 2 people in her immediate family of 6 that hadn't attempted suicide, and Amber was one of the suicidal ones. I had never dealt with this before, and my previous efforts to distance myself from her went completely out of my head as soon as I heard, because I felt an obligation to remain her friend in case it impacted her mental health. So I called out to Amber and asked how she was, why she was there, etc. When Haven finished and came to sit by me to watch the remainder of the performances, Amber made a big deal out of separating Haven and me. Then shit got bad. I received a call from my mother saying that my sister was being taken to ER and they couldn't pick me up, and Amber was quick to take the opportunity. She called her mom and asked if she could pick both of us up. At first they could, then they couldn't, so on and so forth until Haven said my dad is here right now, I can just ask him. So she did and he said yes. Amber was visibly pissed and walked over to some other friend. Just when I was about to go to Haven's car, Amber texted me in all caps. Do not get into Haven's car. I was like shit, what's wrong, what's happening? I call her and she tells me that my parents can pick me up. I think, okay, the ER thing must have not been a huge issue, cool. But Haven doesn't leave yet to make sure I have a ride, bless her soul. I look around the parking lot. My parents aren't there. I call my parents and they yell at me for calling in the situation. I explain that Amber told me they were here, and my parents say they didn't say anything to Amber's mother or Amber. I then call Amber and she tells me, oops, sorry, must have been a mistake. My mom's here now though, so get a ride with me. I lied and said that Haven and I already were on the way. Another day, I'm playing ukulele and writing a song up at my house and Amber is there. She asks if she can help write it, and since I'm only absent-mindedly paying attention I just say yes. She remains on her phone and doesn't do shit beyond a few that sounds good skip ahead a week or so and I'm waiting for the school bus and playing the ukulele. Some other kids come up and ask if I could play them something, to which I saw sure. Amber nearby nearly drops her phone to say let's play the song I wrote. What? I think. Then it hits me. She's talking about that one. I grit my teeth and sigh but start playing it. She doesn't know the words or the melody and just hits in on that one catchy part of the chorus. I'm thinking, I'm done with this shit. I decided to try again to distance myself from her. I was at Amber's house often because my mom couldn't get a babysitter and Amber's parents were chill about it. We had just come back from their neighborhood pool and we decide how the showers were going to work. Amber suggested that her and I shower together. I had just found out that she was bisexual. I have nothing against it at all, but I felt uncomfortable with it. She said come on, we're both girls, it's no big deal and I just repeated I wasn't comfortable with it since I knew she hadn't come out to her parents, and they were listening. She says fine begrudgingly. Just so you all know, I take some of the quickest showers in the goddamn universe. I take like 8 minutes tops. Then I go to take a shower. It was around bedtime on a Friday, so everybody was brushing their teeth and whatever in that bathroom. Their bathroom was set up so one room of it had the sinks and a lock on the door, while the second room in it with the toilet and shower did not have a lock. I couldn't lock them out of the bathroom because they were all brushing their teeth and hair, washing their faces, etc. I'm like 5 minutes into my shower, I'm almost done, and suddenly I hear footsteps. The door opens. I scream and grab my towel and cover myself while shoving the door back closed. I hear Amor's voice say, "You're taking so long," to which I scream, "Get out." I'm a fairly strong girl for my size, so I can keep the door closed against her for 2 minutes or so until she gives up and leaves. I am in a panic and my face gets all numb. I stayed in there leaning against the door, shampoo still in my hair, for like 5 minutes until I hear Amor's parents run over and ask if everyone was okay. I just say I'm fine, and it was an accident on Amor's part. I don't know why I covered for her. I didn't get in the shower, I just wiped off as much soap as I could with the towel and got dressed in my dirty clothes. I slept on the floor that night instead of Amor's bed. I later saw Amor one more time before me and my family moved. We went there to say goodbye to them, even though I didn't want to. Amor told me that day that she used to have a crush on me, and she said you were just so perfect. Her exact words. Needless to say, let's not meet again, Amor. Edit. Wow, thanks so much for the support, guys. I'm glad I got this off my chest. If you guys want to hear more stories like this, I unfortunately have plenty. You're welcome to ask for some in the comments. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Posted by User Freak Nation Podcast. Probably almost robbed, possibly worse, by Craigslist seller. My wife and I were looking for a used car on Craigslist and found one we were really interested in. We contacted the seller and told him we could meet him at a very public mall in an hour. He responded that he wouldn't be available until after he got off work at 5. We agreed to meet him at the mall at 5:30 p.m. We arrive at the mall a little early and soon get a text that he's running late. So we wait. And wait. And wait. Then finally get a text again around 6:30 that he should be at the mall soon. This was in late fall, so it was already getting dark and we were starting to worry the mall wouldn't be as busy soon. A short while later he texts that we should meet him at another address about 30 minutes away in a rougher area of the city. I look up the address and see it's a casino/gas station right off the interstate. I figure it would still be busy around 7, so we head over. We pull into the parking lot and I don't see the car. My wife finally says, "Is that it?" and points to a mid-size SUV hatchback. It certainly looked like the right car. But it was in a dark part of the parking lot, squeezed between some parked 18-wheelers. As two petite women, we were very weary of going over there. We locked the doors and drove over. It was definitely the car, but it was parked in the darkest, most reclusive, least visible spot in the whole parking lot. With the hatch open. No lights were on inside the car and no one was around or in the car. I stopped for a couple seconds to see if someone would come greet us, and when no one did, I drove away. I parked under the casino sign, right next to the entrance of the parking lot, and text the guy my location. He responded with, "I'm over here by the semis." We left immediately. It was all too weird. So, creepy Craigslist guy, let's not meet. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Posted by user Geronimo Allens Y. What is it about hotels that brings out creeps? Almost done with my shift here, but this was just too creepy not to share. So I'm sitting at the desk and a guy comes down to buy a drink from our market. I do the polite chit chat while he pays, yeah no like good morning, how are you, but he just stares at me. I figure that maybe it's just too early in the morning for him and move on with my morning. But about 10 minutes ago I looked up towards our breakfast area and noticed the same guy sitting in a chair facing me and intently staring at me. When I meet his gaze he looks away and I think okay maybe he just zoned out. I keep going with my end of shift stuff and look up again a few minutes later to see him still staring at me. At this point I need to count the drawer anyway, so I scoot my chair over to the drawer, that oh so conveniently happens to be a spot where he wouldn't be able to see me, and start counting. I then look up to notice him still staring, but now he is switching seats. He moved onto a higher stool that has a direct view of me at the desk no matter where I go. He isn't trying to hide or disguise the fact that he is staring at me. While it isn't all that bad or even as bad as some other things I've had to put up with here, something about him is unsettling and he is freaking me out. I'm so ready to get out of here. Although I have a feeling I'm gonna have to go quickly so he can't try to follow me. Update. I have made it home safe and sound to all those worried for me, smiley face. When I left the hotel I speed walked to my car and got in as quickly as I could. When I drove past the door to the hotel he was standing outside watching me. I just hit the gas and took a different route home. I checked behind me frequently and made sure I wasn't followed, but I work again tonight so I'll keep an eye out. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Posted by user Molly Yai. Whatever was in Asbury Park, New Jersey. I think this can fit here. I also posted in r/creepy encounters. I don't know what to make of this. I've never felt this way before and I just wanted to see what others thought. My friends and for the past 2 years go on vacations and pick where we stay by Airbnb. Last year we had no problems even though the house wasn't the nicest, but this year we were sure it was going to be a better experience. We got a house through this one man who had amazing reviews and he was even verified on the app for the reviews he got. When we got to the house nothing seemed wrong. It was an amazing deal and was a really nice place, only a mile from the beach. I never go into a house or a place I'm staying and think that it's haunted or someone was in there or anything, so I didn't think much of it. The house was set up as the following: you walk in, on the right is a room with a bunk bed and a pull-out bed. I slept in there along with my friends E and N. On the left from the front door is the living room with a pull-out bed. The first night we slept there my friend D slept on the pull-out couch. When you walk through the living room it's the dining room and the kitchen. There was a back door in the kitchen that lead out to the backyard. Before going into the kitchen, if you walked right there was a hallway with a bathroom and then another room with a double bed. My friend H and her girlfriend slept there. Next to that, my friends C and A slept together in another double bed. There was a basement that we were only able to get into from the backyard and by using the house key. Like I said, nothing happened the first night and we were all actually having a lot of fun. We went to the beach that night and got food and came back and played some drinking games. The next day we all went to the beach and the only bad thing about the house was it had one bathroom for 8 people. Me, D, H, and her girlfriend went back before the other 4 to shower and just get ready for dinner, so it saved some time. D went downstairs in the basement to check it out and we were all shocked to find out how nice it actually was. It was all redone with a huge couch, some game tables and a nice place for the washer and dryer. D decided that he would rather sleep down there since it was more space and he would have his own little room. His room is in his basement at his house so he's used to it and doesn't get freaked out by anything like that. So that night we go for dinner and everything and come home. D went to bed in the basement and we made sure that he locked the door and all the doors and windows were locked. I get up around 2 a.m. to go to the bathroom by walking through the living room and dining room where I stated above. The street didn't have any street lights, and since all the lights were off in the house, it was complete pitch black in the house. I didn't bring my phone or anything, and everyone was sleeping since we went to bed pretty early that night. I walked through the dining room and the living room when I suddenly got a weird feeling. In the pitch black, I was in the living room and I felt something. It felt as if someone was standing in the corner of the living room. It was like the feeling if you're in a room and someone walks in but your back is to them and you just feel someone in the room with you. It wasn't D since he was in the basement and we locked the doors so he couldn't come up even if he wanted to. I was frozen. I knew someone was in there. The only thing I could do was run through the living room and go to my room and lock the door. I didn't say anything to my friends because they like to think I'm paranoid about things and I know they wouldn't take me seriously. The next day when we went to bed, I was the one to sleep on the pull-out bed. There was a window in my room right above my bed since it was on the floor. Everyone was sleeping and I was on my phone since I go to bed pretty late. The house next to us had a driveway that was on the other side of their house, so it wasn't on our side. Something caught my attention from the window. It looked like a light. I thought it was a car light pulling into the driveway, but I realized that the driveway was on the other side of the house. I looked up and I saw a shadow of someone, and then it looked like an outline of a head looking in the window through the blinds. It could have been my imagination, but since I saw the light it made me even more nervous. I was texting my friend from home and I was telling her how scared I was, and when I looked back, it was gone. The light and the thing that looked like a head. She was texting me telling me it probably wasn't anything. The next morning was when I told my friends ENN. They, of course, that I was joking and just overreacting. I let it go because I knew what I was seeing and what I felt. The next day or the day after that, the right of us split up again, me, D, H, and her girlfriend going up to shower before everyone else. The other four came back, and while N was in the shower, everyone was in the living room talking and just sitting on our phones waiting for her. There was a window in the shower with curtains, but the glass was foggy and blurry so people from outside can't look in when you're showering. Anne walks out in her towel and looks at all of us and goes, "Who was tapping on the window?" We all looked at her and told her no one, since we were all on the couch the whole time. She looked at us like she didn't believe us and asked again. We assured her that we were all in the room the whole time. She said that it sounded like someone was tapping on the window, and since she thought it was one of us, she tapped back twice. A few seconds later, whatever it was, tapped back at her twice. I looked at her and she made a face at me, finally thinking what I've been seeing could be real. Nothing else happened when we were on the trip, but I never get the feeling as if some place is haunted or there is someone in a house. That's the actual first time I've ever been scared to stay somewhere, and I can't explain it was. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Hosted by user Nupana. Went to the movies, got asked out. So this title probably doesn't seem so bad, right? Well, trust me, it gets bad. When I was 8, my parents got divorced, and for years after that, my dad would take me to the movies. We're both movie fans and I loved just hanging out with my dad since he had me on weekends. He would take my 2 cousins too, so it was really a blast because I liked hanging out with them, and going to the movies with all 3 of them was fun. We went to this movie theater all the time. We called it the cheap show since it had older movies, like ones that weren't yet released on DVD, but they were out of regular theaters already. It was a kind of run-down, old movie theater and the floor was never cleaned. The food came in bundles with the tickets for $5 and it just looked gross inside. Hence, the cheap show. Loved that place though. What ruined it for me was this one experience. We had been going there for years. I was 10 at the time, and before every movie, it was my dad's rule that we always had to go to the bathroom. Me, being the rebel I am, decided I didn't need to go, so while my dad and my 2 cousins went into the men's restroom, I waited outside. I remember feeling really good about myself that day. I was wearing this new hoodie with these colorful hearts on it and I just felt like I was proud of my appearance that day. I guess someone else thought so too because two grown-ass men walk over to me. Because I was standing in front of the bathrooms, I didn't think anything of it until they stop in front of me. They're both staring at me, just standing there. And being a shy kid, I got nervous, but they didn't give me any bad vibes right off the bat. I always read on here about being naive and not feeling off about someone and I understand it completely, because I didn't feel anything bad from them. They were just two guys going to see a movie and I was standing by the bathrooms. So one of the men finally says something to me. He moves in front of me, a little too into my personal space and says, "Excuse me, how old are you?" My birthday was coming up soon, so despite being 10, I answered, 11. For some reason, I wanted to be older for these two grown men, like they would somehow like me more for being a year older than I was. I didn't even know them, so why was it a big deal for me? I have no clue. One of the guys is silent, the other one doing all the talking. He says something that immediately triggered that feeling of something is right the fuck off. "You got a boyfriend?" I swallowed hard and the anxiety in my stomach skyrockets into just on the verge of straight panic. I stutter out a, "No," in response, just trying to answer honestly. I still don't know why. He seemed happy with my response, like really happy with it. This awful, creepy, like flirting grin came up on his face. It was like this guy was flirting in a movie or something, that upturned eyebrow and the one-sided, teeth-baring smile. The other guy just has a straight face behind him, his eyes trained on me as I start to squirm under their gaze. I was so uncomfortable with these two. "Do you want one?" At this question, my fight or flight response goes off. The flight part makes me fling myself into the women's restroom. The thought was so quick through my head. All it was, if I go into the girls' bathroom, they can't follow me in there because they're boys. It wasn't even a second before I had that thought then I was in the girls' bathroom. I'm honestly still surprised at my infallible logic that they couldn't just possibly walk into the bathroom behind me because they weren't women. I want to say that I pushed myself against the door, holding it shut with my small body, but I didn't. I just assumed that those rules couldn't be broken, they wouldn't possibly break them. But surprisingly, they didn't follow me. I paced and paced around the bathroom and washed my face in the sink. I didn't know what to do, I was panicking. I just wanted my dad, but the same logic that I thought was keeping those two men out of the bathroom was keeping me from running to my dad in the men's bathroom. When I heard the door to the men's bathroom open and close, I chanced to peek out the door and saw my dad standing there with my two cousins. I immediately ran to him and hugged him tight. My dad, being the joker he still is, asked if I washed my hands before getting my grubby mitts all over him. I ignored his joke, even though it managed to make me feel a little better, just knowing he was there, and told him what happened while he was in the bathroom. My dad got pissed. Info about my dad: he's scary when he gets pissed. And my dad was pissed a lot before the divorce. So seeing him mad because of something I said made me really upset and anxious. "Point them out to me." My dad's voice is low now, not anything like when he's joking around like he usually is. I do as he says and point out the two guys. They're at the snack bar buying snacks and they don't seem to notice me, but I hide behind my dad nevertheless. I'm gonna say something to them. At this, I started to beg my dad not to. Not only because I didn't want to go anywhere near them, but for some reason, I didn't want them to get in trouble with my dad. In my head, I somehow justified it that they could have been my age or just a little older. They were clearly in their mid to late 20s to early 30s, and I know that now, but as a kid, I always thought people were younger than they were. Also, I was a tall kid and the man who spoke was short, so I figured he could have been my age. Now I know that's not the case, but back then, I don't know. After listening to me beg for about a minute, my dad resigned not to confront them. I breathed a sigh of relief and he asked if I wanted to leave. My cousins protested and I wanted to see the movie too, so I refused to leave. My dad let us stay. As we were walking to our movie, though, they were walking the other way, towards the bathrooms. I put my hood up and hid behind my dad and my cousins. I felt their gaze on me as I passed. I didn't see them on the way out. To this day, I no longer wait for anyone outside of the bathroom. And to the two guys who scared me out of that, let's not meet again. 4 comments. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Posted by user PandaDeer. Maybe I should just be single forever. I, 27F, have yet another Tinder story to add to this subreddit. After this I'd just rather not use Tinder ever again. And yes, I know Tinder is not something you use to make friends with, it's just a hookup app, etc. 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 God forbid I try to have a different experience out of it and attempt to build solid foundations with others, right? Obviously after all this, Tinder ain't for me. It's not as creepy as the other posts, but it makes me think, what if? It's also pretty long, grab some snacks. I match with a guy, 29M, because he had a really cute AF German Shepherd. He immediately tells me that he knew me from high school. He was 2 years above me and I literally don't remember him at all, but I did vaguely remember his sister because we were both in the same year. We get to talking and things clicked. We have really nice conversations about old high school life and how we've both changed. He has admitted that I was really attractive to him and has openly said he wanted to sleep with me, red flag number 1, but of course he'd like to get to know me first and see where things go. I had a sense of bad vibes after that. Later he asked if I knew this one girl. I said yes, I do because we used to work together years ago. Lo and behold, they used to date and things ended very poorly between them. Wow, what a small world. They broke up about a month before matching with me, so the guy was on Tinder again. BC, that's how he found his ex-GF, trying to find new dates to get over her and close a chapter in his life, or so he claims. Which is fine, I totally understand. Been there, done that. As we get to talking he kept complaining about her. Honestly not surprising, BC, they did break up very recently and again, been there done that on a different ex-boyfriend before my current ex-boyfriend. It's stupid, it sucks, it's just a bad time. I'm very sorry to all the guys I've matched and met during my mourning period over the end of a 4-year relationship, you don't deserve that. I already told myself that I just want to do things on my own and heal from my recent breakup. There was no way in hell I'm going to get sucked into dating again, especially this soon and with a guy who just broke up with someone. So I was very upfront in telling him that I was not interested in being in any relationship, or have any FWB, BC he did ask, or anything like that. I was down to be a friend and just keep things casual. He understood, or so I thought. Over the next few weeks we'd talk and have nice conversations. He'd say good morning almost every day, except weekends, and kept joking around that he wants to win me over, we should date, and kept saying we could be a couple, but I knew he was looking for a rebound. Every time I turned him down he would say just kidding. Red flag number 2. We even met twice and hung out and it was nice for the most part. All the while he kept complaining about his ex almost daily. Red flag number 3. He said they broke up because it was very toxic, that she was bipolar with suicidal tendencies, faked being normal in public, and fucked him up so bad that he had to go therapy. I was like, wow, holy shit, I didn't know she was like this because I thought she was the sweetest person I ever met when we used to work together. Granted it wasn't for very long, but we stayed in touch after she left and found another job. I told him that he didn't seem mentally ready to be putting himself out there again, and at first he said I was right, he'd just be damaged goods, but then kept joking about getting together. Red flag number 4. After a couple of more days of complaining I had enough and told him that if he was going to continue complaining he's just automatically friend-zoned, technically he was already, I was just really fucking tired of someone complaining about his ex-GF he was trying to get over. His excuse was that it was just bad luck that I also knew her, red flag number 5. What the actual fuck is that reason? I knew my gut feeling was correct. I told him that it doesn't seem fair that I'm being made to be the one to rescue him from his old relationship, so he apologized and said he won't talk about her ever again. He also planned to have a date with me on a Friday, in which food was involved. I told him I would let him know later in the week and initially agreed BC, who could say no to food. After cancelling on our date, I was really tired from being up 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. that day. He was totally fine with it BC, he didn't actually plan anything. LOL okay. We stopped talking for a couple of weeks. No more daily good mornings or long chats, which was okay with me. I figured he stopped being interested and I didn't mind BC, I had other shit to do and enjoying me, myself, and I. Cut to this morning. I wake up to several notifications from the ex-GF on Instagram. First and foremost, she asked that I do not tell him that she reached out to me or else he'd come knocking on her apartment. She explained to me that the guy had been basically stalking her, sent emails to her boss saying that she's a sex and drug addict, etc., made a copy of her apartment key and broke into her home, changed her locks after that, and left her so many voicemails. Said that he was a master manipulator, was really aggressive, and was probably mentally psychotic. She even saw him once since the breakup BC, he left her voicemails saying he was empty without her and she felt bad. Said he knew she had a cat even though she haven't spoken to him since they broke up. How the fuck did he found out? He even went to the shelter to tell them she was a bad pet owner. Confessed he found out through me because I was going through IG and her account popped up on my feed. But before confessing, he made very creepy stalkerish claims that he saw the cat at the windowsill, tried to adopt the cat himself but found out she did, etc. 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 I told her holy shit, you need to get a restraining order. She made some excuses about deciding against it BC, she thought that if she did file one it would set him off and she didn't want to see him in person again even if it was in court. And that it was just a piece of paper that proves who killed her, lol JK. There were a lot of inconsistencies in her story, but I felt that there was some ounce of truth to it. Then she told me to be careful and that she prays for his next victim before wishing me a good day. I didn't know who to believe at this point. They both called each other mentally ill, they both exaggerated their stories and made themselves the victims and the other an abuser. It would explain why he stopped talking to me, but I really don't know the whole truth and I absolutely don't want to know. All I know is that I really don't want to be part of this. Was he lying to me the whole time and wanted access to his ex-GF? Did he really do all those things? Did she do all those things? What would have happened if I did agree to get serious with him? Dude, let's not meet again. Dr. Met a guy on Tinder, turns out to be old classmate. He used to date an old co-worker of mine. They had a bad breakup. We talked for a while, complained of ex-GF almost daily all while trying to convince me to date him. Bad vibes all around. Stopped talking for a while. Ex-GF DMs me saying he's been stalking her and said to be careful and watch out. Never using Tinder again and noping the fuck outta here. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Posted by user Sherlock_Da Vinci. Insomnia saved my life. I am an insomniac and it mostly suck, but one summer night, insomnia most certainly saved my life. It was around 3 a.m., I was 18 at the time and home alone. I went to sleep at 12:30, so not only was I pissed I could not sleep, I was even getting bored. So I thought I would just get up and watch a movie or something and hope to feel tired soon enough, or at least to entertain myself a bit so time would pass faster. When I got out of my bed I heard some noise coming from my bedroom window. It sounded like if something was scraping on the metal frame of my window. I went to pull the blinds in order to see if there was something, but just before I could I heard a click coming from my window. I knew that click sound, it was the sound my window made when I unlocked it. I felt my heart skip a beat. I could not describe in how much fear I was, because at that moment I now knew it was not something but someone at my window. Then while I was frozen in fear, I heard my window slowly and gently sliding open. I felt a mix of fear and rage. Someone was breaking in my house, into my room. I had a sword collection on my wall. I took the sharpest one and I made the blade pass in between the slides of the blind where someone would be in order to open my window. I felt that I hit someone with my blade, and I heard a short scream of pain. I took a step back and was going to hit again when I heard footsteps running away towards the street. With my sword still in hand, I pulled the blind up. There was no one there now. I closed my window and blocked it so it would not be open again. With the adrenaline still rushing, I took my phone and called the police while keeping an eye on my window, and another at the tip of my sword where I could see blood. Police arrived soon after and nothing else happened since. The intruder was never found. So to whoever tried to come into my room, my house in the middle of the night, let's not meet. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Posted by user I recently realized I had a toxic friendship with someone who lives really close to me. Hello, first post on Reddit. Not sure if this is the correct sub, but I hope I'm doing this right. I'm just gonna quickly say that I'm gonna give everything in detail, more or less. How we met, examples of his behavior, and what eventually led to me completely cutting off our communication. This is a rather long post. So, I'm gonna call this dude E for simplicity. E lived in the apartment right across my grandma's apartment. And due to the fact that my grandma lives less than 5 minutes away from my home, I saw her almost daily. Meaning that I met E even before I could remember. Incidentally, my first memory of him was him literally drumming on my head and me screaming when we were both 3 years old. Honestly, most of our hangouts ended in me crying my eyes out due to him either humiliating me or physically hurting me. Unfortunately for me, I am and always have been a very forgiving person, so I ended up coming over to his apartment almost every day after school. Now, another important detail, I literally couldn't just up and not hang out with him, because he was my only friend for a large chunk of my life. I literally had no one else to turn to. He'd also completely change if his other friends were there. If we were one-on-one, he'd more or less wait a couple of hours before humiliating or hurting me. But if one or more of his friends were involved, I was more like a puppet for their entertainment. Once when we were outside, they literally forced me to climb on top of the roof of a small wooden house to try and escape them because they just wouldn't stop insulting me. The worst part being, I was already bullied at school during that time and he knew that. Yet he still kept harassing me like that. Here are probably the weirdest and creepiest things he'd done. The weirdest one being, when we were about 9, he'd try to kiss me. Not a French kiss, just a peck, but he'd still try it. As a 9-year-old girl who had no idea what that meant, I didn't think much of it. I even thought I had a crush on him for like a month because that's what he'd tell me. He eventually stopped trying to kiss me. On the lips at least. Here's the creepiest thing he'd done. His mom had a small garden house not too far from our neighborhood, so we'd sometimes hang out there. I was 12, he was 13. We decided to play with some Nerf guns, so we start shooting each other and having fun. For about 2 minutes. As I was running away to find cover, one bullet hits my ass. I don't think much of it and continue running, but he immediately goes, "Did that just hit your ass?" Not exactly what he said since I don't remember it clearly. It has been a couple of years and it was in a different language. I stop and turn to look at him with slight confusion. I reply with a yet. So what? I immediately turn back around to continue running, thinking he'd drop it and just try to hit me some more, but he doesn't. He says this. Let me kiss it better. I immediately say what the fuck? Why? It doesn't even hurt, don't worry. And look back once again to see him grinning slightly. Then he gives me the weirdest excuse I've heard in my life. He says, well, in my school, when boys and girl have an argument, they kiss to make up. I'm kind of shocked, standing there, genuinely scared, and I try to play this entire thing off with things like there's no need, I'm fine and I don't even go to your school. The E starts fucking chasing me. For a good 10 minutes I'm running around this 3x5 meter yard trying to get away from him, constantly screaming and telling him to stop. He manages to grope me a few times in the process too before his mother returns from grocery shopping or something like that. That was probably one of my most terrifying moments in my life. Now, for the big ass straw that broke the camel's back. This could honestly be a separate story on its own. This was about 2 months after the Nerf gun thing, so our ages are the same. E and I are once again chilling at his garden house, playing Smash and whatnot. At some point, 2 of his friends join us out of nowhere. A 9-year-old kid, from now on the kid, and a 16-year-old dude, just dude from now on. We just play Smash and Minecraft for about another 30 minutes or so before someone, don't remember who, but it wasn't me, suggest we visit an abandoned building not too far from here. I'd include a picture, but I don't want anyone from my area possibly realizing who I am. All of us agree, but the kid seems obviously hesitant. We still proceed. We grab our bikes and go to the building. Now, to give a simple mental image, it was a building with 5 floors with the roof being open. There weren't any windows either and it doesn't look like they were installed in the first place. You access the other floors by walking up some stairs walled off in a desperate space. So we get there, and E's mom is nice enough to bring us some McDonald's. After we finish eating, we realize that the kid is gone. We assume that he chickened out and went home. So now it's E, dude, and me. We start exploring A and D. It was actually kind of interesting. It was a bit troublesome to access the staircase, but I managed to squeeze myself through the open door and push it open from the inside. The higher we go, the more uncomfortable I get. I got a bad feeling in my gut telling me to go back, so once we reach the roof and explore it a bit, I tell E and dude that I'm going back and that I'm uncomfortable. I enter the staircase room and as I reach the middle ground and turn around to continue making my way down, I just see dude fling something towards me. I barely have time to react and manage to duck, right in time for the thing to collide with the wall with an audible schmock. I turn around and see a dove. An actual living dove stumbling around, clearly disoriented. I look up to the 2 guys and they're laughing their asses off. I'm scared, so without thinking, I rush to the ground floor and start sitting in front of the entrance, thinking about what just happened. After a couple of minutes, I hear something from above. My name. Catch. I look up and see E and dude, standing on the roof before he throws something over the edge before disappearing out of sights, clearly laughing. I follow the thing as it falls down, landing about 3 meters away from me. I didn't immediately realize what it was, so I cautiously walk closer to it to get a better look. It was the same dove from earlier. I realized it was the same one because it had the same white spots on its body. Fucking dead on the ground. Blood splattered around it. I was so shocked and mortified that I couldn't move at all. Until I heard the 2 guys opening the door from the staircase. My fight or flight instincts kicked in and I rushed to my bicycle and tried to pedal away, but E fucking grabbed my bike from behind, preventing me from leaving. He starts giving me a fucking lecture about I know how people act on the road when they're in this mood. And all that nonsense. My house wasn't even that far away from that spot. Not even 5 minutes. I keep desperately trying to get away from him, crying and begging him to let me go, but he just wouldn't. I miraculously managed to get free. I remember the feeling of his fingertips trying to grab my bike again, but I got away. When I got home, I completely broke down. He tried to text me saying shit like I didn't throw the dove, it was dude, but I just ignored him and eventually blocked him. He tried to get me to talk to him again and even pretended to be his mother while texting me. That was the last time I willingly saw him. Since my neighborhood is rather small, and my grandma lives so close, there's a high chance I'll bump into him again. It's been 2 years now, and I've run into his mom a couple of times and I also saw him a couple of times, but I don't think he recognized me because I've changed my appearance a lot. He did try to talk to me by inviting me to parties on PS4, but I did my best to ignore them. I'm still scared of the moment I bump into him and he invites me over to his house again, because I know he'll do that if he sees me. How about no? Edit, fixed a mistake. The yard was much smaller rather than how I originally described. Sorry for the mistake. Edit 2, noticed some grammatical errors. Sorry if I didn't fix all of them. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Posted by user Biancaneve. Decent colleague turned into a predator. This happened in 2009. I was 24 and worked as an office manager in one of the sub-companies of a big architecture and design consortium. We had regular staff in the office and more designers and engineers working on the various construction sites the company was building, so they would only come to the office at the end of the workday or around paycheck time. Beside my other duties, I was also in charge of their work schedule, so naturally when they would come, it would be me whom they'll interact with most often. Most of the engineers were a bunch of middle-aged seasoned men with a bit of a raunchy sense of humor, but harmless nevertheless. Then there was this new guy Boris, who transferred from another city. He was in his 50s, different than the rest, but looked rather well kept for his age, kind of dignified and very well mannered. He was a dead ringer for the actor Sam Elliott, which instilled even more of a respectful attitude towards him. The man was always extremely polite, his jokes were not cynical, and on top of all he has recently become a grandfather. His son had a baby daughter, so he was very proud and happy about it and would always talk about her and show pictures every time he visited the office. Everyone liked him and I felt safest around him, because he never made me feel like a piece of meat, unlike his colleagues. The project he was appointed to had foreign investors, so on the site worked a translator in her 30 IES, her name was Vera. She was very friendly too, and even though we didn't often get to see each other in person like with the rest of the office colleagues, we would always be joking around whenever we had any interactions over the phone or via email. Before the official Christmas party, one evening the engineers came around closing time and Vera was with them. It was one of those casual and relaxed times in the office, not only because it was the end of the shift, but with the holidays being near, it created that chill friendly atmosphere. Boris was especially excited and suggested we all go for drinks in some pub nearby, because spontaneous gatherings like that don't happen often and there's no better time than the now, etc. Despite his convincing arguments, everyone else was busy and declined, but I felt bad for him because I knew that he was alone as his family was back in his hometown, so in the end it was just me, Vera and him. It was snowing heavily outside, so we ended up in a rather dingy dark pub close to the office building. Initially the evening was fun, we laughed a lot, discussing some work-related events and sipping red wine. As it progressed, however, I started feeling more and more uncomfortable, because Boris, whom up till now I thought of as a father figure, usually so well-mannered and respectful, was giving off a very different vibe now. He was decidedly flirty, and the more he drank, the more aggressively he expressed it. What started with him staring at me with a rather predatory glint in his eye and giving me compliment after compliment, completely out of context, progressed into him somehow turning every conversation into sexual innuendo and a way to show me how attractive he finds me, asking me questions about my personal life, etc. I said I wanted to leave and stood up, starting to gather my things, when he playfully took my hand but squeezed it so hard that my rings bit into my skin and it hurt me. He was trying to convince me to stay, and when it didn't work, they both decided to leave with me. Once we were out and started walking, the Christmas lights, decoration, and the streets bustling with people helped him convince us to go to one more pub just for a while longer, because the night was young and it was not often that we got to go out for drinks with colleagues like that. I should have listened to my gut and refused, but instead I let myself be convinced and agreed with a plastered friendly smile on my face, because back then I was so out of my element in such situations, I didn't really know how to react. I was afraid of direct confrontation and frankly uncomfortable and ashamed. The second pub was even darker than the first one. We picked a table on the second floor, near a terrace overlooking the first floor. There was nobody around us there. He sat across from me, and this time he had no qualms to openly stare down at my chest, even though I remember I was still wearing my work clothes, which are rather conservative. I was biding my time, hoping we would leave soon and at least calm that I was not alone with him, because Vera was there, although she was kinda tipsy and giggly and seemed oblivious to my discomfort at his constant hints and sexual innuendo. Then she got up and went to the restroom. Boy, did I cringe hard then. My whole body tensed when he suddenly stood up and sat next to me, put his arm at the back of my chair and told me in a lustful voice, "Come to my place tonight, I want you so badly." I almost dropped my wine glass. I froze, feeling trapped because I was between the wall and him, didn't know how to react, didn't have the guts to be flat out rude to him, so instead I nervously giggled and said, Well, I'm flattered but can't do that." He seemed to take it as me merely playing hard to get, so he upped the ante and caressed my hair, leaning even closer, whispering to me, "Come, I promise to make you feel incredibly good, I know how to please a beautiful girl like you," and then licked his lips suggestively. I almost puked. I tried to gently push him away from me, but he didn't move until Vera came back from the restroom in what felt like hours later, but was probably maybe 5 minutes. When I saw her, I felt both relieved, yet also ashamed because of what she would think when she saw him so intimately close to me in her absence. I suddenly jumped so quickly, I pushed my wine glass and spilled the rest of the wine on the tablecloth. I declared I want to go home and don't care if they are ready or not. They protested but in the end agreed to go with me, because it was very late so I wouldn't be alone outside. Frankly, I just wanted to get as far away from him as possible, but there he was, acting like nothing happened, helping me with my coat like the perfect gentleman, without me being able to protest, as he was first to the coat rack, and when I had my coat on, he once again used the moment to lean into my ear from behind and whisper, "Come, please come with me, I'm hard for you all evening," and pressed himself to me enough for me to feel the proof of his words. I started climbing down the stairs and the chilly winter air felt like a relief. There were no taxis in sight, so I was forced to walk to the bus stop with the two of them, her chattering obliviously on one side of me and him on the other side, constantly pulling at my hand or touching me, trying to get my attention and mouth come with me secretly if I looked at him. When we reached the bus stop, the bus that came first was that of Vera, so it meant I would have to remain alone with him. Instead, I decided to catch the bus and then get off on the next stop and call a taxi there. He didn't expect me to go with her, though, so he made one last attempt to grab my hand and make me stay, but I pulled it away and got on the bus. When the doors closed, I started shaking and felt like crying. I told Vera what happened, but to my dismay, she was rather dismissive to it, saying that he is a good-looking man for his age and I could have had fun with him. Then she admitted that he was always talking about me and all the other engineers at the construction site were aware of his crush on me, they were even teasing him about it. She said that he actually wanted to organize such an evening of going out as a pretext to get me alone at some point and try his luck. I felt disgusted. Even more disgusted when the text messages started. He professed his obsession with me, he was pleading with me to agree to at least meet him one-on-one for drinks, said he didn't want to scare me, blah blah. This lasted for a week or so, before I realized I could just block his number, although I was dreading the inevitable next time we would meet in the office. I confided in another colleague from the office, who also happened to be the niece of the big boss, and this time I was taken seriously, especially after I also showed her the messages. I didn't see him the whole week, then after the holidays I learned he went back to his hometown. Not sure what exactly happened and whether or not he quit or was sacked, but to my relief I never saw him or heard from him ever again. Thank you for reading. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Hosted by user CCC15650. Ma'am, can you come over here? I really need a lighter. Last summer, my friend and my boyfriend at the time went on vacation in Daytona Beach, Florida. I never went to Florida previously, and didn't realize how sketchy the area was until I had already arrived. We arrived at our low-end motel, called the Grand Prix. The owners knew little English, so it was hard to converse with them. I took my stuff in the room we were in, and unpacked. After unpacking, we wanted to go see what there was to offer for entertainment, or at least a bar to stop at. I booked our Uber to pick us up in 10 minutes in the motel parking lot. As I opened my room door to go outside, a guy almost instantly shouted to me from the other side of the parking lot, "Hey miss! Hey you! Do you have a lighter?" It was a tall man, from the Middle East if I had to make a guess, and he had two other guys with him. My BF and friend were still in the room during all this, and for whatever reason, my friendly dumbass was like, "Yes, I definitely can give you a lighter, here." They insisted that I would need to walk over to them. I had a weird feeling about that. But luckily, my BF came outside at that point. The motel owner all of a sudden comes running outside the front desk office. He was screaming at this group of guys, "Get out of here, get off this property or the police will be called." I was thinking to myself, what is going on? The owner then told us that this group of men had stolen off them repeatedly, did a few other things he wouldn't speak of, and that word around was they were involved in a big sex trafficking ring in Florida. But I assumed everything was okay now. They were gone, right? 5 more minutes went by and our Uber pulled in. As the Uber turned to pull out of the motel lot, I looked to my left and behind the front desk building, aside a bush in the dark those 3 men were hiding. I made eye contact with the guy who asked me for a lighter. Instantly, I had chills. I called the front desk, and tried to explain what I just witnessed. I don't know what their intentions were, but I always think about it here and there. What were those men doing? This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com. Hosted by user Cobrazak. I never want to see you again. I'm going to warn you now. This story is a bit long and quite a doozy. Grab some popcorn and perk up those ears. This happened about 6 years ago. I'm 27 now. Having said that, I apologize if there are small details missing or that I don't remember. I had gotten out of a 3-year relationship that didn't end particularly well. I didn't want to be one of those girls that made her way through a friend group, if you catch my drift. I wanted a change of scenery. I decided to try my luck on a dating site called OkCupid. I know, terrible idea. I'm well aware of that now, but hindsight is always 20/20ths. In my mind, most of the dating sites are a cesspool of incels, catfish, or desperate people. To my surprise, I actually went on several decent dates. No red flags, creeper vibes, or weird feelings. Luckily, I made my mom aware of what I was doing, so whenever I'd go on a date, she'd know where I was and when I was going to be home. Mama didn't raise no idiot, right? Wrong. This is when I came across Dennis's profile. He seemed chill, kinda cute and somewhat interesting, so I sent him a message. He was playful and had a sarcastic sense of humor, right up my alley. I decided to give him a shot. We met at a coffee shop and had some very engaging and interesting conversation. Dennis was 5'9", normal build, balding with reddish hair and glasses. He definitely gave off some nerd vibes. He started off by asking, "What are you looking for?" I gave my normal response, "I'm wanting someone who is sweet and caring, but also funny and intelligent." Something along those lines, nothing groundbreaking, cut me some slack, I was young. I realized later that giving this sort of response was the beginning of the end. Dennis and I went on a couple more dates that were unmemorable. I started to fall head over heels for this guy and fast. He's sweet, understanding, caring, empathic, worked out, and took care of himself. He was everything I ever wanted in a guy. It was difficult to understand why he was single. Since I was falling for him so quickly, we agreed that we would be exclusive. Everything was going smoothly until about 2 months into our relationship. That's when shit started to hit the fan. For the last month, I had been pushing him to let me hang out at his place and to meet his roommate, from the suggestion of my parents, because they're smart people. Every time I'd push the subject, he'd always make up some excuse on why we can't. "My roommate is crazy, it's not a good time for him, he works opposite schedules than me, etc." It was always something. At some point, we had made plans to go out to a club one evening. I was all dressed and ready to go, waiting on him. He ended up not answering his phone for a couple of hours. I realized his phone must have died, since whenever I would send him message, it would never say delivered, for those of you are Apple users. I ended up deciding to go to his place to see if he would answer his door. I obtained him address at some point, I don't remember how. He lived about 15 minutes from me in an apartment complex, and it was the middle of winter, February. It was fucking cold. I knocked on his door, no answer. While heading back to my car, look who decided to show up. None other than Dennis himself. And guess who he was with? Yes, you're correct, another woman, which I later found was long-term girlfriend Jessica. I quickly made my way over to him, and the look on his face was fucking priceless. His face deadpanned as soon as he saw me. He whispered something to the girl he was with, and she made her way inside. He came over to me and was speechless at first. "I am very surprised to see you here." "Really? We had plans, remember? I wanted to see if you were home." "I do remember, my phone died so I didn't receive any of your texts and I lost track of time. We were at a friend's birthday party." "Who's the girl?" "My roommate." "I thought the guy was your roommate." "He is, she's my other roommate and a very good friend." Mind you, I'm a very skeptical person and alarm bells were definitely going off in my mind, in accordance with my parents' numerous warnings. However, Dennis is the sort of person who is very good at talking himself out of situations. His reasoning behind the decisions he makes, why he made them, etc. He was an excellent liar, and being the naive and insecure person I was, I believed him. We ended up going to the club after I waited for him outside in my car for almost an hour. I didn't think about it too much since I was getting what I wanted and nothing was said about his girl roommate. Over the next month, I kept pushing Dennis to meet his family and his guy roommate. He eventually caved and brought me to see his mother. It was an extremely odd experience. We talked about books and some of Dennis' friends, and I made some snide remark about how Dennis' guy roommate was fucking nuts, Dennis' words, and they both gave me the strangest glances. This would make more sense to me in about a month or so. Eventually, I started to realize that Dennis' stories weren't adding up, and I started to see holes in his stories. He would only see me on Tuesday and Thursday evenings because he worked a lot of overtime. He would never be flexible or change his mind, or even allow me to attempt to change his mind. If he was late coming to see me, which started to happen pretty frequently, he would send me screenshots of his work and his work vehicle in line for getting a wash. Or, he would send me screenshots of his bathroom saying he just wanted to freshen up. When I would ask for a picture of him in that moment of him in his bathroom mirror, he declined. He refused to send any pictures of himself, proving that he was where he claimed to be. He would also take unusually long bathroom breaks at my house after sex. I saying, like 20 or more minutes long breaks, I know, another huge alarm bell. Everything came to a head about a month or so later. I told Dennis that I wanted us to go somewhere with no phone service so that we could truly spend time together without technology being a distraction. He agreed. We ended up making plans to spend 2 to 3 days in Canada. It was still early in our relationship, 4 months, and my mom wanted to make sure I was safe, so she took down Dennis' driver license and made a copy of it, as well as his license plate. Thank you, Mom. The trip ended up relatively uneventful until the last evening in the hotel room. I'm not sure if it was on purpose or if he was actually asleep. Dennis ended up rolling over to my side, pulling me in close and saying, "I love you, Jessica." That made my blood run cold. I was so upset. Tears started to blur my vision as I got up out of the bed. My parents were right all along, he was a liar and a cheat. Did I break it off? No, of course not. That would make sense. Why? I was naive and desperately in love with him. I also didn't want to admit it to myself that I had been played or that I was the side chick. So, I acted as if nothing was wrong and that I didn't hear what he said that night. Of course, it didn't get rid of the aching feeling that I had for several weeks. I began to have bad anxiety and panic attacks on my to school because of the bad feeling in the pit of stomach. Dennis was constantly lying to me, and I mean constant. It was so bad that I ended starting to feel angry. I let that feeling simmer for a couple of days until I decided to do something about it. When realizing that you were right all along and things weren't just a strange coincidence, it's very bittersweet. On a freezing March day, after an exhausting day at school, I wanted to get rid of the nagging feeling in the back of mind, once and for all. I decided to head for Dennis' apartment complex to see if he was still lying to me about living in the apartments with his girl roommate. I got out of my car in the parking. I was shaking. I didn't know it was from anxiety or from anger that was starting to bubble below the surface. Was he lying about his girl roommate? You bet your sweet ass he was. I knocked on his door and hid myself from the view of their peephole. He answered the door with his girl roommate behind him. I came from around the corner to look at him with an emotionless face and say, "Whoa." I turned on my heels and walked away. Only to find out as I get back to my car that I locked myself out of my car on a cold March day in the middle of winter. I was so distracted by my rage and sadness that I didn't realize I left both my keys and phone in car. I'm such an idiot. I was besides myself. I didn't know what to do. I locked my phone in car along with keys. How the fuck can you do that? I was so angry at myself for being a fucking moron. Not only that, I was in the parking lot of my cheating ex-boyfriend's apartment complex. I wish I was making this up. I really do. With nothing else to lose, literally. I walked back to Dennis' apartment and knocked on their door. Jessica answers and I beg to use their phone to call AAA. Jessica, surprisingly, agrees and lets me use her phone. This entire time, Dennis is agitated and kept walking around after I got off the phone with AAA. At one point, he even went outside with a coat hanger in an attempt to unlock my car, but to no avail. During that time, I took advantage of me being alone with Jessica to get some information out of her. Like, how long have they been together? Where did they meet? I felt as though I was an auctioneer. I was shooting 20 questions at her rapid fire before Dennis came back in. By the end of it, had more than enough information to prove that Dennis was not who he says he was. Everything started to make sense and puzzle pieces began connecting. One of the biggest aha moments for me was when we both were talking about being in a relationship with him on Facebook. It turns out, This sly motherfucker created 2 different Facebook accounts to ensure he was in relationship with us both on each of them, only to block the other girl on that account, guaranteeing that neither of us would come across each other or his other Facebook account. I remember in the beginning, I commented on how his Facebook profile was super limited and didn't have anything on it. He claimed it was only because he used Facebook to befriend co-workers on it and didn't use it much. Anyway, near the end of our conversation, I tried convincing Jessica that Dennis was a pathological liar and didn't care about her. It was at this point, I realized that Jessica could have been aware of everything that Dennis was doing and was in on it, or she was just that naive. I tried texting her after I had left their apartment to try and talk some more sense into her, but it was useless. Dennis was with her alone and was a master at skewing and spinning stories. Unfortunately for him, I had one more trick up my sleeve. Over the course of the next week, I spent my remaining few free hours I had, if I wasn't studying or working, gathering evidence against Dennis. I did research on Dennis and Jessica through Google, but mostly Facebook. This is the scary part about Facebook if you don't have your privacy settings on lock. I found out who Jessica's parents were and decided to send them a message through Facebook with all the evidence I had collected over the past week and a half against Dennis, ensuring that they would believe me and my story. When I say evidence, I mean photos of him and I, screenshots of conversations we had through text, pictures of him and I, etc. All of these pictures, texts, conversations having timestamps to show that he was seeing me at the same time he was seeing Jessica. Hoping they wouldn't write me off as some crazy ex-girlfriend or some psycho, wishful thinking, am I right? The message is long, so grab your second bucket of popcorn. I have copied it verbatim from the original post that I sent several years ago. I have changed some information to protect my privacy and the privacy of others. Hello, insert Jessica's mom's name. My name is X and I thought there was something you should know. Your daughter is being lied to by her current boyfriend, Dennis. I met him on an online dating site, OkCupid, and we spent the last 5 months together. But Dennis ended up lying to me about his life and everything about it. I doubt your daughter knows the extent to which she has been lied to. I feel it is only right for me to share the information I have collected with you so that it may be brought to your daughter's attention and so he can no longer get away with this type of behavior. Dennis is not who he says he is or appears to be and has lied about many aspects of his life. Let me explain. Asterisk note, for most of the information I give you today, I also have pictures as evidence, and for your convenience, to back up what I have to say. I will mention each time when a picture can be paired with information provided. First and foremost, a breakdown of the Dennis Dooley that I learned about while dating him for 5 months. Full name, Dennis, middle name, last name. Phone number, XXXXXX. Address, X. Dennis's mother's address, X. Workplace, XXXX. Includes details of his work schedule, as well as, him working alternate weekends. Exact vehicle description with disguising features, XXXXXXXXX. 2 distinguishing decals on the back window. Picture provided. License plate number, XXXXXXX. As stated previously, I met Dennis on OkCupid, an online dating site in early November. His online name was X, picture provided, which is also the same online name he uses for Flickr. We dated for 5 months until I found out that he lied to me about his living conditions and the fact of that he also has another girlfriend, your daughter. I have several pictures showing that Dennis and I were together as a couple. He also has several Facebook accounts, pictures provided. One he called a work Facebook in which he was in relationship with me on and another account in which he was in a relationship with your daughter. His work Facebook account no longer exists, since he deleted it, but I was able to take pictures of it before it was deleted to prove what I am saying. Before continuing, I should mention that I have met your daughter twice. The first time was very brief and Dennis told me that she was only a good friend. They had just gotten back from hanging out with, friend's name, at Dave & Buster's for his birthday, Pictures provided. This was back in early January. The second time meeting her was for a longer period of time, this was at the beginning of March. I ended up going to Dennis' apartment to see if he was lying to me about still living at the apartments. He was. I ended up knocking on their door, to find Dennis answering it and to see your daughter standing behind him. Jessica mentioned to me about how she and Dennis have been dating for almost 4 years. I was also made aware of another Jessica, her name is Jessica Wallace, he dated not too long before he started dating me, pictures provided. Jessica has also sent me texts mentioning that there may be a possibility of him seeing other women aside from your daughter and Jessica Wallace, pictures provided. I will attach separate files with all of the photos I have collected. They will be in the order in which they are mentioned in this letter to you. I hope this information is of use to you, and I hope I was able to help in proving that Dennis is not who he says he is, and for you not to be fooled like I was. Thank you very much for your time. Sincerely. X. I did end up receiving a reply for her mother the following morning. However, this post is already long enough and I will post the responses, if anyone is interested. The last time I heard from Dennis was a message he decided to leave in the grass in my backyard. It was a dead rabbit with its head cleanly cut from its body. It was clear a human did it since there was no sign of blood and the head was cleanly cut off. My family and I reported it to the police in case any escalation happened. Luckily nothing did. Unfortunately, Dennis was smart enough not to take it any further, but it was clear, he was very angry. He didn't want to leave any sort of trail, through internet or paper implying that he did it. Anyway, if you've stuck around this long, I thank you for your time. This took quite a while for me to write since there was way more drama than what I have mentioned above, and I have no desire to relive this experience again. My method of madness is to get my story out there so that anyone reading or listening can know that your feelings are valid and to listen to your gut. Ladies and gents, please be mindful and careful of who you become close with. The stories you hear on TV about people living 2 separate lives or this wasn't the person I knew are very much real and they exist right under your nose. And to Dennis, fuck you and fuck your empty apology. I feel sorry that Jessica had to deal with your dumb ass as long as she did. You're only sad that you got caught. I hope karma plants you right on your ass. To all the ladies he has messed with, I hope you're okay and that he hasn't dashed too much of your confidence. He's a lowlife and that's all he'll ever be. Thanks for listening. Take care friends and be careful. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Posted by user Kristen Ashley Ho. Window intruder in flip-flops. Hey y'all. I'm back again with another story from my younger years. You can read my first 2 here and here, they're long, my apologies in advance. This is the story of the window intruder in flip-flops. I was 19 or 20 years old when this happened. I grew up in a fairly large county in Southern California. Within this county there are a few cities that are pretty bad, one of which I lived in at the time. The apartment was gated. My bedroom was the only first-story apartment that had a window that faced the parking lot. While the apartment was gated, the parking lot was not accessible by the public. That night I had a buddy G over and we were smoking weed. While G and I were hanging out, I was also waiting on the guy I was, more or less, seeing to come over, L. When I got the text from L that he was on his way, I asked G to leave. I also had a group of friends who lived in the same apartment complex. Right around the same time I asked G to leave, the group of friends texted me that they just returned from the bar. They asked if I wanted to hang out, to which I responded no, and that I had plans with L. Unbeknownst to me, up until this point, G was still sitting in my parking lot in his car trying to sober up before driving home. Within a couple of minutes after receiving the text from my friends, G texted me that there was a strange person wandering around the parking lot. G had a job that involved being highly aware of his surroundings. I don't know why I didn't take him seriously. I assumed he had mistaken a neighbor or one of my friends who had just arrived back at the apartment for this strange man. I told myself maybe someone forgot their phone and had to go back, or maybe it was a neighbor. G continued to text me that this man was not leaving, was peering into cars and generally being shady. But at this point L had arrived and I stopped paying attention to my phone. Maybe 30 minutes had passed since I last looked at my phone. I completely forgot about the shady man. L and I were now in my room, in bed watching TV. All the lights in my room were on and my blinds, you know, the hanging plastic kind often found in apartments, were slightly cracked. Anyone in the parking lot who looked at my window would be able to see the glow from my TV lights. If you were in the parking lot, it was pretty clear someone was in the room or at least home in the apartment. At some point during the night, I think this was about 11 p.m., I got out of bed to pour L and me a glass of wine. As I was walking back toward my bed, which was against the wall with the window facing the parking lot, I noticed a dark figure trying to pull the screen off my window through my cracked blinds. I alerted L, who opened the window quickly and asked if he could remove the screen. Of course I responded to absolutely do it. L took off barefoot running after the intruder. L was military, thank goodness. He disappeared down the street after the intruder and I called 911. It took over 25 minutes for anyone to show up. Finally 2 sheriff deputies arrived and L was still nowhere to be found. I couldn't call him because his phone was still on my bed right where he left it. They took my side of the report in the parking lot of my apartment while we waited for L. As they were chatting with me, L appeared from the back of the parking lot, farthest away from the street where I was standing with the deputies. He had something in his hands and as he approached I could see it was a pair of sandals. L approached us and told his part of the story. Apparently the intruder was wearing black track pants with white stripes down the side, a black t-shirt and sandals. Clearly well prepared for breaking into a home, I assume he was on drugs. In the pursuit the intruder lost or ditched his sandals and L grabbed them. L said he chased him for blocks. Eventually L lost him or gave up, I honestly don't remember anymore. The deputies left and we went back inside. I remembered then what G had texted me earlier in the night and grabbed my phone. As it turns out G was in the parking lot up until just moments before the intruder tried to break in my window. He had continued to text me saying he had a really bad feeling and wished I would answer. He sent me one last text that he finally felt sober enough to drive and was leaving, but if something happened to call. I told G what happened. G's field of work required that he have police scanners on him. Later that night as he was listening he heard a report of the same man trying to break into a home not far from where my apartment was located. No idea if he was ever caught. Window intruder in flip-flops, let's not meet. This audio file was created by Panopreter Basic. You can download it at www.panopreter.com.
Well, that's all I have for now. So did you like my video? I really hope so. I'm new at this, so please come back for more. I will try to get one video a week, then as I get better and better at making great videos I will make more per week. So subscribe and hit the like button. Don't let me down. Tell me what you think down in the comments. Thanks and goodbye.